I really love this chapter on results, relationships, and responsibilities as it relates to leadership. Because to me, this is really about what leaders actually do and how they move through their work responsibilities. So the overview for today's lecture is that we are going to take a look at the 3 R's, and those are the results, the relationships, and the responsibilities. And this is, depending on how a leader is, their own personalities, their background, and their experiences, it brings how they react to each of these areas become very individualistic. So let's take a look and let's start. So one of the very first understandings that you need to do as a leader is that you are responsible for achieving results. Ulrich and colleagues in 1999 really took a hard look at why it is important that leaders achieve results. And they came up with these 3 questions to answer. And they're important because, again, as a leader, you will be held accountable for this. So what are the results that you need to achieve? Now, some of these results could be set by your boss, they could be set by a governing board, or they could be something that you know that you need as a leader of an organization. So for example, let's say that you are responsible for raising an additional $50,000 a year from alumni. So that is the result that you want to achieve. Now, then you look at it based on a scale. Based on a scale of 1 to 100, how likely are we to be able to produce those results today? So how likely is it that I'll be able to increase alumni donations by $50,000? Well, likelihood is probably pretty small, because otherwise I wouldn't really have to be spending time on it. So let's say we'll give it a 10, but that number, can be moved. So then you must answer that third question: what must you learn and do to make these results happen? So what needs to go into that? So for example, to raise the additional $50,000, I might need to know and understand who my alumni are. What are their giving habits? Who gives? Who doesn't give? And understand that research. And then based on what I learn, then it could become creating ideas and goals. So for instance, maybe it's a mailing to achieve smaller donations, or maybe it's creating a match, or maybe it's highlighting some high profile alumni. And we would take a look then to see if we're able to achieve those results. Because we know from a sports standpoint that, being able to produce results is very important. I mean, our coaches, you're judged on your wins and your losses, and your job hinges on it. So we're very, very results oriented in our sport programs. There's also organizational performance. A great way to look at it is through this Learfield Directors Cup, which tracks and ranks all of the intercollegiate athletic departments based on their competitiveness, and it's done through each division. But it clearly outlines how an athletic organization is performing. And also through organizational effectiveness, and those are some of the intangibles, like job satisfaction and the athlete satisfaction, and how is an athletic department doing from an organizational standpoint. The second R has to do with relationships, and certainly relationships exist everywhere. I mean, in the workplace, it's relationships with employees and cohorts and others, that exist in the organization. Their relationships can be very external. They can be relationships with boosters, VIPs, the local community. And believe me, as a leader, everybody wants something from you. So these relationships become very, very important. And we'll take a look at 3 areas in terms of these relationships and how important it is to build, to understand what interpersonal relations is, to build trust, and to deal with interpersonal conflict. Improving interpersonal skills. As a leader, these are some very crucial skills that are required because you need to be all things to a lot of people. Now, Dale Carnegie wrote the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he published that in 1936. But every single one of these skills is still relevant today, and I encourage you to take a moment to think about how you can apply these interpersonal skills in your life. Through relationships, you also need to build trust. To me, this is a foundational key leadership because without it, you will not be able to move forward. Now, Bennis and Goldsmith created these areas in terms of how do you build trust. And again, I encourage you to think about in your own life, how do you use these 4 C's to build trust amongst your peers and people that you interact with. And the third area of a relationship has to do with interpersonal conflict. And it's important to understand that you cannot avoid it. And to avoid it, any sort of conflict actually often makes it worse. So you must be able to confront it and to understand what the intensity level is. Is this just a brief conflict? Somebody's upset about something and it's easily resolved? Or are there some very deep underlying factions that are going into this conflict that really will take some time? And then it becomes how do you create constructive responses and be able to help people resolve that conflict. And understand that no one approach works in every single situation and that no situation of conflict is the same. And it really becomes very individualistic. Now, moving into our third R. Our third R for a leader to know and understand has to do with responsibility. And this responsibility is very, very important. And the book talks about responsibility from all of these different areas. And you really should take a look and understand that. These responsibilities can be found on pages 36 to 43 and are really central tenets to creating and becoming a strong leader and understanding how that responsibility fits in. I do want to talk about one of them, and that is the leadership credibility and how important that becomes to a leader. And that leadership credibility is built on foundation by Kouzes and Posner, in which they create 5 practices for building credible leadership. And if you are able to look at these 5 areas and bring them into your practice as a leader, this will really help you to build the credibility that leaders need. And these can come out, throughout different ways and different means, but they're all very important to be able to build that leadership credibility. It does take work, but it is certainly can be rewarding. Now today, we took a look at the 3 R's and how these are all connected. As a leader, you must be able to produce results. It's why you are hired. And you have to know what those results are or what people are expecting of you. And you cannot produce those results if you do not have relationships with not only your staff, but with others around you and the external audience as well. And know that all of this is your responsibility, and how you achieve each those results and those relationships really comes through from building that credibility, and really working on creating that leadership area. And these will be a foundation that we will use, as we move through the class. Now, our next steps for you will be to look to the discussion for this chapter on Blackboard, and then also any of the assignments that are a part of this as well. So thank you, and I will talk to you soon.